Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Chairperson. I think it is the Honourable Steenhuisen who most understands being the joker in the pack. Chairperson, we're very pleased to have the opportunity
Honourable members,
to participate in this debate. We are looking forward with great interest to the President advancing the international cooperation objectives that he outlined in his State of the Nation address. We are looking keenly to the practical steps that will be taken to implement the tripartite free trade area agreement, which will combine markets of 26 countries and a population of consumers numbering more than 600 million people. We believe action in this area will increase demand for products, revive manufacturing, and create jobs on a scale not seen before on the continent. We're also looking with great interest at the conclusion of a continental free trade agreement on the African continent, because it's our view that African countries have not developed as yet the art of securing value for the continent as a bloc. We believe immense potential lies in the possibilities of a continental free trade area. For example, we could share experience and practice with respect to minerals processing and innovation, as well as looking at how we share with respect to ensuring food security, agro-processing, and many other areas that could become continental areas of free trade activity. We also are thrilled that this year we chair the BRICS group of countries, and that we will give priority to the promotion of value-added trade and intra-BRICS investment into productive sectors. At the same time, we also this year chair SADC, and we will intensify regional efforts to implement our industrialization strategy, to develop an infrastructure roadmap and implement it, and promote increased cooperation among SADC countries. These objectives, Deputy Chairperson, Mr. President, resonate with South Africa's very progressive international cooperation agenda, which was forged by our leaders in the course of struggle. Our focus correctly includes achieving our national interest goals, but as leaders such as President Mandela and Mama Sisulu taught us, national interest in the absence of a strong foundation of global solidarity makes international cooperation soulless and uninspiring. The broad international cooperation agenda that was set out by you, Mr. President, during your address solidly reflects these conjoined imperatives. We have obligations to the friends who supported us in the course of struggle, who stood beside us in trying times. We must never forget them. We must never desert them. Our agenda of international cooperation in 2018 offers outstanding opportunities. Most exciting probably this year is our celebration of 20 years of cooperation and solid partnership with the people of the People's Republic of China. Madam Deputy Chairperson, any foray into international cooperation in this year, in which we celebrate President Nelson Mandela and Mama Albertina Sisulu, reminds us that we are beneficiaries of their courageous commitment to international friendship. We, in our own vein, must show similar courage and commitment. President Mandela began building links of solidarity on the African continent in the early 60s, and we must never waver from this critical focus. Our program of international policy and practice has been significantly strengthened by the 54th Conference of the African National Congress. The majority party has agreed that government must cut diplomatic ties with Israel, given the absence of genuine initiatives by Israel to secure lasting peace and a viable two-state solution that includes full freedom and democracy for the Palestinian people. We must also not neglect the last occupied territory in Africa, Western Sahara. Now, Mr. President, that Morocco has been readmitted to the African Union, it must be obliged to finally free the suffering masses of Western Sahara. Of course, Mr. President, as you indicated, Africa lies at the heart of our international cooperation policy, and this is absolutely correct. Our commitment is to deeper integration and cooperation through shared markets, through the development of strong institutions on the continent. Our relationships have to be those of mutual capacity sharing and not those of a neo-colonial dominance by South African mega corporates on the African continent. There are two perceptions as we pursue this agenda that South Africa must address decisively. The first is the challenge of xenophobia. We must engage our nation on the solidarity we espouse and work hard to persuade all of Africa of our commitment to Pan-Africanism. We will reach out and must to the rest of the continent to address all concerns and to advance African solidarity. This is our obligation and we must execute it. The second challenge is the notion that we do not share the benefits of BRICS membership sufficiently with our compatriots on the continent, nor, it is believed, do we share those that we derive from G20 membership opportunities. We need to work hard through you, Mr. President, to dispel these options and have practical responses to them. One of the ways in which we can do this is to build on the science and innovation partnerships we have achieved through the most significant global scientific project of the 21st century. South Africa, in partnership with several other African countries, made history in 2012 when we secured the right to co-host the Square Kilometre Array Global Radio Telescope. The project has allowed for significant benefits in human resource development and science infrastructure capacity development in our partner countries on the African continent. It is a model that we believe we must use to build on in the future. Your announcement, Mr. President, of a major investment conference planned for later this year offers further opportunity to advance our Africa strategy. Investors from the continent must be part of this summit so that we secure African investment in South Africa and opportunities for our South African investors in other African countries. We need to change the nature of the South African conversation and the nature of the African collaboration so that it truly advances the development of the continent. Our investment promotion efforts must include incentivizing multinational companies to locate and relocate some of their R&D facilities to South Africa and indeed to other African countries. We must be firm on our insistence that Africa becomes a knowledge and innovation hub, particularly in sectors prioritized in the National Development Plan. Further strengthening of our Economic Development Zones program will support our cooperation efforts. We intend to become a partner of choice for high technology enterprises and startup companies. We've been left behind by countries such as China, and on our continent by Kenya and somewhat by Nigeria. We need to intensify our efforts to catch up. Africa's greatest resource is her people, particularly young people. We should use international cooperation to expand the skill base of our continent. We need to address our skills gaps and develop an international skills development initiative through our higher education institutions. we are facing a fierce worldwide competition for skills. We need to develop rules to ensure that we become an attractive participant in this global skills competition, while also developing our own local skills base. Our immigration policy on skills must support us in addressing this aspect of our international agenda. Mr. President, for years, our foreign policy has been assisted by the success of our own negotiated political settlement. Other countries saw us, and in particular President Mandela, who we celebrate this year, as an example of how to solve political problems practically and without violence. Now, in our new dawn, it's time to ensure that we utilize international cooperation to increase employment, to eradicate poverty, and to eliminate inequality. So we must put our partnerships to absolutely good effect. Africa remains our focus, our #1 priority, but we will, Mr. President, ensure that our foreign policy sustains warm relations with all our chosen trade and investment partners. As we work to strengthen our BRICS partnership, we will certainly not neglect other valued and established partnerships. And as we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we may very well, Mr. President, learn a great deal from China's recently announced plan to ensure the digital revolution takes off in their country. And as we plan to invite our African partners, as you will, to the BRICS Summit meeting, let us ensure that we draw on the strengths of China, not as a benefactor, but as having lessons that will aid us in advancing our national development goals. Now, Mr. President, having said all that, I was intrigued today to note how antiseptic the response to your call for deep debate has been. And I envy you not in trying to develop a substantial response to some of what has been said. Fortunately, somewhat the Honorable Shivambu has saved the day, a little bit. However, Mr. President, I noted with interest that the Honorable Maimani offered his hand and then quickly took it away, too nervous to be resolute about joining a national program of radical transformation. I also wish, Mr. President, to assure Honorable Malema we are resolute on land expropriation without compensation. On the basis agreed upon and set out by our party at its national conference. We also, Mr. President, assure Mr. Malema that he should not have sleepless nights because Mr. Ramaphosa will be President Ramaphosa of South Africa following the general election of 2019. We feel a sense, Mr. President, of sorrow for his party in that it will continue to rely on the good graces of the DA to be in political office. And that will exist until 2021 because they will fail to convince their former voters that indeed their vote will lie only in their hands. We therefore look forward to hearing the explanation that will tell those voters why a neoliberal collaboration was more preferable to a collaboration with a progressive movement such as the ANC. Deputy Chairperson, we were rather astounded to hear the remarks of the Honorable Groenewald concerning his belief that white youth do not get opportunities due to black economic empowerment. All verified data shows that this is not true. All verified data indicates clearly that this assertion can be strongly disputed. 23 years after our democracy, black youth continue to suffer the burden of exclusion and marginalization, including women, as described so well by Honorable Ngwenya. Ms. Ngwenya, we wish to confirm the commitment of the African National Congress to a non-sexist society. This is fundamentally a task we are committed to executing. And we would welcome attention to the fact that great strides have been made, and that perhaps our failure as public representatives is to fail to imbue a concern for women in our general population, in that much of the violence takes place in our homes between persons who know each other, and that we need to have greater care being exercised by our entire male population within our families and within our society. So it is not that it is political parties that are practicing the violence. It is our families. It is those who are close to us. And we need to be able to engage them to change their conduct. I believe that the Honorable Mbele would be pleased with the progress he's seeing being made by the police as they do what needs to be done. I certainly would agree with him that one of the things that we need to address is this issue of empowering railway police, because indeed they are underfunded and lack support. So it is an area that we would have to pay greater attention to. As to the Honorable Legota, well, he spoke and then left, as is usual. And I sadly have to say I found his contribution rather embarrassing. I couldn't understand how a leader in the struggle who had suffered imprisonment and other strictures and who understands the mispossession that was practiced and dispossession among the people of our country, a person who would have that at his root as his rooted political education should understand we have nothing but an obligation to ensure that we repair that history. So I found his comments most amazing. I think we would all, Mr. President, welcome the promise of support that has been indicated to you by Reverend Mishwe. But I do say to him and other colleagues that they should leave you to choose your cabinet if you wish to, and really leave it to yourself to decide. Now, Mr. President, much has been said about the uselessness of summits. Well, as a person who works very closely with non-governmental organizations that feel that government doesn't reach out to them sufficiently, I found it rather amazing that the intention to engage the people could be regarded as an exercise in futility. It is exactly the correct approach. And, Mr. President, may we thank you for finally giving Mr. Holomisa something different to say, because the economic summit will now happen. So we thank you very much for that. We absolutely, of course, wonder sometimes at Mr. Ploama. He appears from time to time. He says it's not a new dawn. He's a person who just, I think, meanders in darkness. There's just something that keeps him in that space of no light, no hope. And I really did not find a useful comment there. I would advise the Honorable Kachalia to perhaps look at some of the steps that have been taken by the Transport Department in order to address the very matters that he referred to. You would see that there is some improvement. There is, of course, much more to be done, but work is underway, and this is absolutely great and should be acknowledged and appreciated by a member of Parliament concerned with respect to those areas. So we, Mr. President, are very excited that the Transport Department has begun to address the matter of vessels that have our flag, as well as ensuring that our ports are able to receive more and more vessels, and that this becomes a sunrise area of economic activity. I do not think the President is anybody's prisoner, and I don't know what the loony left refers to, but since you're sitting to the left, perhaps you know. I'm not sure. We are certainly resolute about the need, and we would assure the Honorable Kachalia about the need to address red tape, because this keeps coming up as an issue that must be attended to, and I think we should look at it. On the matter of low labor productivity, we'd have to identify the sectors that we're talking about, because I think we castigate workers in our country far too much. And millions of them work extremely hard and receive really inadequate wages. So I think we should stop this label that is negative of workers and talk about particular sectors and the means in which we could improve productivity in them. But let us say thanks to many, many of our people, of the people of South Africa. Mr. Lekota asked, who is our people? All our people are our people. But when we talk about land, it's those who've been dispossessed, who do not have it, that we want to have access to ownership of that land. We certainly would ask that the Honorable Mbabama provides an indication of the farmer whose land, she says, has been taken away illegally, so that our colleagues working in the sector can address the issue. Now, the Honorable Mbinda has clearly not been reading all the literature on the fee-free higher education policy announced by former President Zuma. I would suggest that he gets all the briefings, and I'm going to ask Honorable Minister Cde to give him a copy of the full statement, and he will see what the policy actually states. Furthermore, it is absolutely untrue that vice-chancellors are befuddled. They've been fully engaged on this matter. There have been several meetings, some of which I actually had been part of as a member of the Interministerial Committee. So, Mr. Mbinda, I assure you, the policy is there and it will be implemented. I think I'm in agreement with the Honorable Juster that we cannot take grants as the main solution to poverty in our country. I strongly agree with Honorable Juster in that regard. And I think as well that she made some very interesting points around the need to attend to the matters of nutrition and food security. And I would say, as we hand land ownership to the people, we will have an increase in food security because they will work the land that they own and benefit from it. So I absolutely agree with her on the need to address these areas. And of course, we are committed through the President to improving the number of jobs and opportunities for the people of our country. Honorable Godi, we must never tire of pursuing the vision of building a united South Africa, a people united in their diversity. It's a vision, a dream, something I think we should not give up on. It's a task that our forebears have handed to us, and I really disagree with you that it's something we will not achieve. Of course, the most vulnerable and marginalized in our country must be attended to and provided with the appropriate support. But all South Africans should feel they belong in our country, and we must create the conditions for that to happen. That is our mandate, that is the aspiration of our Constitution, and we must execute in that regard. Finally, Honorable Kasim, we have done a great deal in education. Not everything as yet, but much has been achieved, and the new form of debate of content and work, requires acknowledgement where there's been progress and identification of challenges.
Thank you,
where they
Honorable
exist.
Minister.
Thank you,
Your
Deputy.
time has expired.